Proud of the NBA players. Can't say enough. This is what it's all about. Sacrifice, because that's what they'll be doing. You know that the network's going to lose money, so as a result, the league is going to lose money. As a result, the owners are going to lose money. As a result, they're going to make sure the players lose money. It don't matter. That's what the players boycotting these games. That's what they're saying. It doesn't matter because there are things that are more important than money. Our people is more important than money. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. It's that kind of sacrifice that we're talking about. My man Joe Madison, the Black Eagle on Sirius XM Urban View Radio, always says that it's about sacrifice. Anytime you protest and every time you take in a stance, it's about a sacrifice. And that's exactly what these players are doing. I didn't like it when I first heard the Milwaukee Bucks were doing it. I said, well, excuse me, where's the Orlando Magic? Where's all the other teams that's going to be playing today? Because I thought it would have been a mistake for any team to stand alone. But standing together, that is saying something. That is what this is about.
It was about sacrifice, but it doesn't seem like it's about that anymore. We'll get into that. We've got our friend Jerry Callahan joining us now. He is a legend in sports talk radio up in the Boston area, and now he is the host of the Jerry Callahan podcast. He joins us. Jerry, great to have you on the show.
Hey, Buck, good to be here.
All right, so just for everybody listening, because, look, I'm not a sports guy. My radio producers make fun of me because I don't know much about professional sports, but I'm a politics guy, and this is very political. What happened in the last couple of days with the NBA, and we'll get into some of the other leagues too. Bring us up to speed on what happened and where we are now.
Well, there was a brief boycott led by the Milwaukee Bucks. They were up 3-1 in their series against Orlando, and they decided to not show up for work. And then the dominoes just fell from there. The Clippers and Lakers, led by, I think, LeBron James, voted to cancel the rest of the playoffs, just not play at all. But I think they were outvoted today, and there will be playoffs. And then it kind of put the pressure on the rest of sports. The WNBA, I know I'm heartbroken. The Washington Mystics walked off the court, and, there's a big void in my life. I don't know about you. And MLS, Major League Soccer, decided not to play. And then immediately the questions go to baseball, football, college football. Most teams just stopped practicing for a day or two because no one wants to appear like, they don't care, that Black lives don't matter. They all want to seem as woke as LeBron. So they're all following along and either just taking a day off or a week off or just saying, this is too important. We can't be playing sports right now, even though it's their job. And others like Kenny Smith, the TNT announcer, walked off the set in the middle of the show. His job is to analyze basketball, analyze the NBA, and that's what this called for. It called for him and Charles Barkley and Shaq and Ernie Johnson to do their jobs. But he said no in support of the players. I'm walking off, took off his mic, and walked off.
It's pretty amazing how quickly this all turned around, though. Usually when you think about a situation of a boycott, it's people stop buying a product or stop paying for a certain service in response to something, and usually they want a change from that company, right? You do X, and we'll start to buy your Goya beans again, or you said X, Goya, we're going to stop buying your beans, and then of course there was the counter boycott that happened there with that company. What is I'm just wondering, what are all these players? Is this just kind of like the equivalent of taking a knee? Is this theatrics? Is it for show? Because they're not making any. It's not like they're demanding that the NBA do police reform.
It's a great question. I think I asked the same question about Antifa for 90 days in Portland. I said, at some point, don't they have to make a demand? You have to do this, or we will keep rioting. The NBA and other sports leagues and teams are taking this dramatic action, this theatrical action, and they don't actually say. There's a series of tweets that someone put together from all the players, and it's just one guy after another saying, we want change, we're not going to stand for it. LeBron James, their leader, his tweet that kicked this whole thing off says, F it, we're sick of it, we must change. And I'm thinking, first of all, the guys demanding change are going to, they all want to register to vote and encourage everyone to vote. And they're going to vote for all the same incumbents, the mayors and the governors who are running these cities and these states where all the problems are occurring. So they don't really want change. I'm not sure. Do they want different? Doc Rivers, coach of the Clippers, in a very emotional press conference, talked about getting rid of police unions and changing the way police are trained. Really kind of bizarre, because I guess it's all about Jacob Blake, a violent fugitive, because
who had a knife in the car, as we now know as well. The car that he was reaching into when cops were saying, stop, stop, stop. Go ahead.
And to me, Doc Rivers is from Chicago, right? Chicago has had 2,500 shootings already this year. They had 64 last weekend. Most of them, black men and black kids. And you don't hear the NBA talk about walking off the job because of that violence. I mean, which is much, much more serious than police brutality in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And Doc Rivers got choked up and started crying at a press conference about what happened to Jacob Blake. It's really bizarre. And you ask a great question, like, what is it you want exactly? This is pretty dramatic. I'm not sure whose mind it's changing, whose heart it's changing.
More people are killed every year in the United States, or let's just say the last few years, because they're the ones that I checked. People die on average more frequently from actual lightning strikes than unarmed black men are killed by police in the United States every year. It's about 40 to 50 die from lightning strikes. And this year so far, I believe it's 9 unarmed black men have been killed by cops. We're speaking to Jerry Callahan, a longtime sports radio host in the Boston area. He's the host of the Jerry Callahan Show. I want to ask about because this is something you'll know a lot about, and I'm always curious because I'm not a big professional sports guy. I watch some of the things. I watch a little bit of the NFL. I watch tennis, actually. Not that I don't think anyone's walking off the tennis court for this stuff. But anyway, maybe. I mean, it could happen, right? I mean, the WNBA walked off, so even things that don't get quite the same viewership, people want to get their part of this. But the business model component of this. Here's the New Orleans Saints, Malcolm Jenkins, speaking of demands and what's expected here. Here's what he says has to happen for him, and I suppose other players upset like him, upset as he is, to be happy. Play clip 6.
In this political landscape, I hope that turns into some kind of political engagement by athletes and by everybody to say that, if you want the black vote, and whether you're a candidate who's looking to be elected or be reelected, if you want the black vote, these are the things that are at the top of the agenda for black people. We haven't heard it yet, and I think until we continue to demand it, until Black Lives Matter goes from just an idea or goal that we're trying to attain as a society and then is actually realized in the streets, we won't see any peace. And I think we'll continue to see athletes, entertainers, as well as citizens disrupt the status quo until that's recognized.
To say we won't see any peace, for an NFL multimillionaire celebrity to say that at a time when there are multiple U.S. cities, and I don't mean in recent memory, I mean in the last 24 hours, where there has been fatal violence, arson, destruction. I understand that within some constituencies and some communities, those comments will go over very well. But the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, I don't know where they are on this, but some of these sports leagues, is there a recognition, Jerry, that if they continue down this path of politicization, it may really cost them in economic terms in a way that they'll really feel? Or is this a bit like, Colin Kaepernick with Nike, guy's richer and more famous than he's ever been, even though half the country thinks the guy's a jerk?
I would say B. I'd say there is no reflections. There's no awareness here that this could cost them in the long run. I mean, the NBA, the numbers were already pretty bad, the ratings, and they would attribute it to being, the pandemic, and it's the summertime, and it's kind of a strange schedule. But I think I hear it all the time. People, there is a backlash. There are people who have reached their breaking point, say, I'm not watching, I'm done. Maybe they'll go back, next season, but right now it's just woke overload, and the NBA is the most obnoxious one. I mean, they painted the court, they get the messages on their jerseys. They're always talking. There's a whole bunch of players who talk about Breonna Taylor at every press conference, and I think at some point, not all the fans, but some of them, enough of them, are turned off by that. And we'll see what happens with football. Football's different. It's bigger. It's on schedule, on a normal schedule. but I hope they're not as obnoxious as LeBron in the NBA and Doc Rivers and the NBA. The thing with this right now, Buck, is it's a monolith. There is no dissent allowed. There is not a player in the NBA allowed to say, maybe Jacob Blake was partly to blame here. You can't do that. They won't do that. There'll be no one supporting Trump. I say this all the time. Trump has gained in many segments. We know that with independents, with African Americans. I think one group that he's not doing as well now as he was 4 years ago is sports. There's virtually nobody, no athletes. The coaches are so beholden to the athletes that they speak out against them. Steve Kerr and Popovich and these guys. There's just no room in sports right now for anybody who's not completely anti-Trump and completely woke. It's just not allowed.
Jerry Callahan, everybody. Listen to the Jerry Callahan podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and be sure to follow him on social media. Jerry, thanks for weighing in, man. You take care.
Buck, good talking to you, my friend.
That is why voting in November is so important, because Donald Trump does not care if you live or die of COVID or of racism, as long as he wins. And until we, the people, change this administration, we will continue to get more leadership from the NBA than the RNC.
Until the NBA wants to start making money again, and then they, in about 24 hours, decide that, forget all that leadership stuff. We got cash to make, right? Oh, the NBA, that great moral force that bends the knee shamelessly to China and China's human rights abuses, and China will reach into U.S. discourse and influence our professional athletes, our, enormously profitable association of the NBA, and we're supposed to think that they're a moral force for good. Now we're supposed to believe that the NBA is really, real speaking truth to power stuff until it really affects their pocketbooks, and then all of a sudden it changes. Also, you'll notice there are so many so-called comedians who just do really bad political commentary and have other people write jokes that they can slip into their political commentary sometimes. But that's Trevor Noah, Colbert, Kimmel. These are unfunny people who are really ignorant and don't know anything about politics worth hearing. And now they think that they should be weighing, now they're in my world, right? I don't go up and do stand-up comedy terribly and expect people to pay attention to me. They do political commentary horribly. They don't know squat. But they will lecture you endlessly. Never enough opportunities to lecture the American people on how they're disappointing multimillionaire comedians who have to show up and do an hour of work a day and get millions and millions of dollars. Oh, it's so hard. Oh, it's so difficult. Sure it is. Pretty amazing. Oh, wait, I didn't get to this before. I wanted to just take this as a mulligan. Sterling Brown and George Hill read a prepared statement. This is about the Bucks when they initially said why they weren't going to play in the NBA. Play 19.
The past 4 months have shed a light on the ongoing racial injustices facing our African-American community. Citizens around the country have used their voices and platforms to speak out against these wrongdoings. Over the last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball.
When we take the court and represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable. We hold ourselves to that standard, and in this moment, we are demanding the same from lawmakers and law enforcement. We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demand the officers be held accountable. For this to occur, it is imperative for the Wisconsin State Legislature to reconvene after months of inaction and take up meaningful measures to address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform. We encourage all citizens to educate themselves, Take peaceful and responsible action, and remember to vote on November 3rd on the behalf of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, that lasted 24 hours. The whole, like, we're going to take action because they won't take action. And now they're going to play basketball again. I got to tell you, I have to ask the question, what exactly is the reform that is expected 3 days after an incident involving cops? The legislature should come back and what? You know, there's actually a constitutional prohibition about something called a bill of attainder. Now, I don't expect, journo libs, PhD blue checks probably don't even know what the heck a bill of attainder is, but it's a law passed with the purpose of going after one person. And if you know the history of our legal forebears, so to speak, with English common law, this was done under various English kings. They would have a law passed that would take all the property of one person, or a law passed that would imprison or execute one person, a bill of attainder, a law that goes after one person. Is that what they want here? There's supposed to be some action taken to punish the police officer involved here, when the police officer involved, if they want to know what justice is going to look like, they should be prepared right now for this cop to walk. Because the cop, based on the facts and circumstances we see, not only do I believe that a jury would find him not guilty of any criminal act whatsoever, I don't even think that an honest, ethical district attorney would bring charges against him. I do not even believe that a district attorney here would see the need to put it to a grand jury. That's just where we are right now. But Democrat prosecutors regularly overcharge alleged crimes that upset the mob, that involve police or anyone who stands up to the mob, and they bend over backwards to avoid punishing rioting lunatics at every opportunity. These corrupt cowards, in the role of prosecutors, are complicit in every burned building, looted store, and bloodied bystander. Every single one of them. Can't even trust that you're allowed to defend yourself now against the mob. Can't even trust that you can stand up and count on having the law on your side, even though the law as written is on your side. But the law as applied by Democrat prosecutors who want to keep their jobs and stay woke, that's a very different thing, isn't it? Yes, we're turning now to our athletes for moral clarity and complicated political wisdom. That is better than turning to Hollywood celebrities. Why exactly? Anyone want to try that one on? Just curious.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call time. Let's get to it. TJ kicks us off. Buck, I think we're going to see a huge voter turnout for the election day itself in numbers that, dare I say, trump 2016 numbers. I see what you did there, TJ. I think most Democrats value their votes too much to simply mail it in and will physically be at the booth on November 3rd despite their rhetoric. My point is that I don't think we're going to be waiting weeks or even days to know the outcome of the election. I think we'll know at the very latest early the next morning based solely on the number of votes that will be tabulated day of who wins the presidency. However, Hillary's recent projection of voter suppression and telling Biden that under no circumstances should he concede is a little disturbing, to say the least. P.S. Tell Trump that it'd be a good year to end daylight savings. Well, yeah, that Hillary Clinton comment about the not conceding under any circumstances, I mean, that's an outrageous comment. And can you imagine if Donald Trump said no? They claim without evidence, as they like to say, that he wouldn't concede. And they claimed in 2016 he wouldn't accept the results of the election. Meanwhile, they didn't accept the results of the election, and now they're saying they won't concede. There we go. As for daylight savings, yeah, I agree. Producer Mark, where are you on daylight savings?
I like it when we get an extra hour. I dislike it when we lose an hour.
Yeah, I feel like why don't we just keep the clocks where they are and just live life? I don't understand why we have to do this thing. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think it has to do with how much sunlight you
Yeah,
get
no, of
each
course.
day. But is it really necessary? No, I don't think
Who
so. I agree with
cares?
that.
Yeah, what are we afraid of the doc? By the way, where's Jerry Callahan's Boston accent?
I mean, he's a
Park.
broadcaster. He probably lost it.
Park, doc, ka. You know, Jerry doesn't have any of that. He's not. Doesn't have any, well, that's like people say that I don't have a New York accent. They're like, you're not really from New York. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'm from Manhattan.
Once you're in broadcasting, you lose your accents.
A little bit.
Because the old adage in J school, journalism school, or when you're learning radio is to sound Midwest.
Well, no, I think it's Mid-Atlantic is what they teach you, which is not.
Yeah.
You know, like they call it they refer to it in Anchorman. She says she has a nondescript Mid-Atlantic diction or something like that, which is kind of where I guess what it is. But it's, yeah.
You're supposed to sound like nothing.
Yeah, it's supposed to sound like nothing. Midwestern can be, as we know, oh gosh, yeah, it can be kind of like, oh, yeah, don't you know?
Is that really the Midwest?
No, it's Minnesota, and all the Midwesterners throw stuff at me when I say this, I know. Like our friends out in KFAB Omaha, they're like, Buck, you do not, no one in Nebraska sounds like that. I'm like, that's fair point, fair point.
That's the Midwest I'm talking about, not Minnesota.
Minnesota.
That's practically Canada.
Wow. Our Minneapolis listeners are going to be like, Producer Mark.
Just in terms of geography, it is practically in Canada.
No, that's true. The good news for you is that they love hockey almost as much as you do, though. So they'll be friends of yours forever. But I think that daylight savings could go. I don't like this at all. There are some things. If Buck were king for a day, daylight savings would probably go. Backup noise on vehicles would definitely go. Sorry, life's tough. You got to just use your eyes. I don't know what else to say.
Bill de Blasio would be put on a garbage barge and sent out to sea.
Perfect, exactly. Yeah, we wouldn't send him out with nothing. We'd put him on a garbage barge and just let him, fend for himself. Kind of like Castaway, but surrounded with, rat feces and discarded cardboard boxes. I think that's
Perfect.
fair.
I'm down with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair for de Blasio. Yeah, man, I there's some other things that I'd have to think of. We would, something really good for dogs. I don't know what it would be, but there'd be laws passed. There'd be edicts from on high that good things have to happen for all the doggies. And that's pretty much it. Think about the fun things. Zach, listening to Pelosi refer to the RNC as the enemies of the state makes perfect sense when you consider she probably sees herself and the DNC as the state itself. Yes, Chardonnay socialist Nancy Pelosi, when she wakes up from a Zima-induced semi-coma, she definitely thinks l'État, c'est Pelosi. The state is Pelosi. I think that's probably true, Zach. Well played, well done. Buck, I'm not sure if you could say super douche on the radio, but I'm glad you did in order to properly describe Joe Scarborough. Well, Kyle, I mean, yeah, I try to keep it all very, but I'm just going to say this. People say, oh, you can't say that, but that word. Well, people say jerk, for example, and if you get into the origins of that word, a lot of this stuff is actually related. You can call someone a jerk. Why can't you call him a douche? So,
there are 7 words we are not allowed to say.
Right.
According to the FCC.
Right.
Other than that, we're fine.
Yeah, no, douche is not one of them. So,
and if you'd like to hear them, Google George Carlin's 7 dirty words.
There you go. Just saying, folks. Just saying. But yeah, no, Joe Scarborough, he that guy. It's just look. There are ideological opponents. People disagree. There are conservatives I disagree with on a lot of things, personally, or I just don't like them. But I can at least respect what they do, or I respect. But with Scarborough, the guy's just grotesque. It's just grotesque. It doesn't add anything. The whole thing, it's all just such a fraud. What is he even doing over at MSNBC? How could you work in MSNBC and claim to be anything other than a lib? I just want to, given what they do over there, how can you do that? It's like working for Pravda and saying, oh, I'm not a Communist Party prop. No, you are. You are. All right, Kyle goes on. As for what white fathers tell their white sons about cops, here's what I learned from mine. If you get pulled over, put your keys in the dashboard and your hands on the wheel to show you aren't a threat. Have your license and registration ready before he gets to the car. Do not reach for anything unless you ask for permission. Because we're hunters, he told me to declare any weapons in the vehicle and tell him that they are legally owned, unloaded, and where the rifle and ammunition is. Say sir or ma'am when addressing them. And finally, if you feel that the issue is worth arguing over, save it for court and not for the encounter. It's amazing how easy it is to not get shot by cops when you do those things. This isn't rocket surgery. It's called not being a moron. Kyle, I get what you're saying, my man. And the same thing. Look, I've rarely had to interact with cops. I've been pulled over a few times, but it's very, very rare. And I think everybody, when you get pulled over, as a civilian, even you're kind of like, it's not going to be a good day for you. But cops are people too, and they respond well to respect and politeness. That's always been my sense with them. I will say I've found, if you're wondering who can be kind of jerks from law enforcement world, Secret Service details can be jerks sometimes. Just gonna say it. I've had a few unpleasant interactions with them where it's like, no, I'm not supposed to be here. You're just being a jerk. So, look, no one's perfect, and it can happen. But I also am friends with someone in Secret Service, great guy. So I'm not impugning one entire law enforcement arm. I'm just saying, we've all had our unpleasant interactions with cops. The same way we've had unpleasant interactions with, pizza delivery guys or, teachers or doctors or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. But yeah, if you show overwhelmingly, 95 times out of 100, in my experience and everybody that I know, if you show respect to police, you are in a better situation, and there will be a degree of professionalism and respect shown back to you. And I'm also a big believer in sir and ma'am in public interactions of all kinds. I say sir and ma'am to the person, sweeping up the horse manure on the street after the parade. I say sir and ma'am to the Secretary of Defense or, the head of the HHS or whatever, right? I'm a believer in sir and ma'am, and I think it's funny because I've actually been mocked for that before because I say sir and ma'am so much. So what, were you in the military? No, I just like to be, I like to be respectful. I don't know. I think it's important.
Some people don't like that, Buck.
Don't like being respectful?
No, don't like being called sir. My father-in-law, the first time I met him, I called him sir. He got pissed. He said, what do you think, I'm old? Like jokingly pissed. But
he was. But that was like producer Mark pissed. He wasn't actually pissed.
I'm just saying, some older gentlemen don't like being called sir because they don't want to be called old.
See, I don't think being called sir. I mean, I call 25-year-olds sir.
I agree with you, but I'm saying there's that perception.
Yeah. It's also like a huge advantage you can give your kids, in my opinion, and without ever having actually raised kids myself, teaching them to say please and thank you so it's automatic. Any request is please. Anything given is thank you always, right? There are certain things, and it's trained. There's certain brainwashing I think is good, and brainwashing your kids to just always say please and thank you is, the same way you want to brainwash them to hold the door for a lady or whatever. I think those are good things. So I know that's maybe a little traditional, a little trad, old school kind of view, but I think it helps people out. Remember, if you want to send us some thoughts for roll call, facebook.com/Buck Sexton, direct message Buck Sexton on Instagram, or you can also send us an email at teambuck@iheartmedia.com. So that's it. And then please pass the buck. Tell somebody about this show. Available on the iHeartRadio app and Spotify. We want growth in that podcast every month if we can get it. And the way that it happens is by people telling people about this show. Is there really a podcast out there that covers more ground, that has more variety, more in-depth analysis? I don't think so, folks. Not on politics, not on the stuff we do. So please do, not to be immodest, I'm just saying, I'm keeping it real, because I'm keeping it real. Please do pass the buck. Sam, dear Buck, and, oh wait, no, we skipped Josh. Hey, Buck, crazy how fast they come up with a narrative on the Wisconsin shooting during the riots. Not protests, don't be confused. They are calling the Antifa thugs heroes for trying to apprehend the shooter. You got to give it to the left. They are great salesmen. Keep it up, Buck. Shields high. Yeah, no, I mean, the people that, I'm just going to say this. If someone ran at me with a skateboard and I had a rifle and they saw my rifle slung over my shoulder and they come at me with a skateboard and try to hit me in the head, I'm probably going to shoot that person and not feel bad about it. Because what's the alternative? To get slapped in the head with a skateboard, possibly knocked unconscious, or even just, stunned enough that that person can then wrestle that rifle out of my hands and shoot me with it. Nope. Not on my watch. All right. Rather be judged by 12 than buried by 6. Just saying. I think I got the numbers right on that. Let's see here. Sam, dear Buck and Mark, after the left abolishes the police, who do they think will enforce all the rules they need in order to create their socialist utopia? Sam, it's a very good question. The left likes the use of state force when it likes it. Right? They don't want to get rid of the right the government has to send people with guns into your home, to take you out of your vehicle, take you out of your bed, and lock you up and take away your freedom. They don't want to get rid of that. They just don't want it used against people that are hurting fellow civilians and citizens because the mob doesn't like that right now. The mob thinks there's something unfair about stopping looting, rioting, arson, violence, destruction, theft. The mob wants to do what the mob does. So, they don't want to actually abolish the police. They want to continue to use the police for their own purposes. Dave writes, hey, Buck, you nailed it tonight. I grew up in an upper middle class suburb of Richmond, and my father made it very clear not to disobey the police if you get pulled over. Watching the entire videos of these confrontations is disturbing, to say the least. This is somewhat related, but remember A&E canceled one of the most popular shows, Live PD, which clearly demonstrated law enforcement is there to help. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. It's crazy, truly crazy. Yeah, Dave, I mean, I was taught the same thing. Listen to police. Do not fight police. That's a terrible idea. It's not going to go well for you. And I've been put up against the wall and patted down and searched by cops when I was a kid. Believe it or not, Buck used to stay out pretty late and party pretty hard when he was a youth in his teens. A bit of drinking. Never was a guy using drugs. Certainly none of the hard drugs, but I was around a lot of people who were, because in New York City that was very common. And we were always aware of the police and everything else. And yes, if any of you were wondering, when there were incidents of, I don't know, a house party that got too loud and there was underage drinking going on, let's say, was I the person who was always on the spot, voted by my friends to discuss with the law enforcement officers how we would quiet down and not cause any more? Yes, that was my job. So I was the one who interacted with police in those situations. I remember one time in particular in Newport, Rhode Island, cops came to a rowdy house party. It wasn't my house. They're like, Buck, you go. 2 cops outside banging on the door, police. And I come out, I'm like, excuse me, officers, what seems to be the problem? It's like 18 years old at the time. Are there any kids in there drinking underage? Officer. No, of course not. We are all very responsible young men and women who are just enjoying a night of revelry with juice and non-alcoholic beer. The cops were very nice that night, I will say. They definitely could have taken some of us down for underage drinking, and they did not. Greg, hey, Buck, if you enjoy the mythical atmosphere and challenging melee combat of God of War, give Bloodborne a try. Many consider it one of the best games of this generation. You'll die a lot, but the challenge is part of the appeal, as well as the setting in a Lovecraftian dreamscape. Yeah, I did try God of War. It's pretty amazing. And I am now, once the PS4 has been opened up for me here, which is what's happened. My brother left it with me because he's going to be doing some traveling. And now it's at my house, and I'm the keeper of the Sexton PS4. And I am trying out some of these games. Although I'm also trying to get back out and do some working out and things like that because, it's either that or I'm going to have to get a whole new wardrobe. And we can't have that going on. Plus, I have an announcement pending about some things that you all can watch and see soon, but can't really tell you more than that, other than, cliffhanger from the Buckster. All right, team, please do pass the buck. Tell somebody to download the Buck Sexton Show podcast, and we will be back with you tomorrow doing a fantastic Friday show. Shields high.